Vivier here, and today with Kinwomen we are going to speak about the topic of boundaries. Kinwomen is for women, by women, from friends.
For friends,
and it is a great opportunity for us to just take a moment to catch up on what is happening around the grounds this week.
Oh,
how are you going, guys? What are you into? How is life? Anything new on the table?
Okay, well, what's been happening for you, Kel?
I always think I probably do live in my head quite a lot. I don't know if anyone else does that, but I do. So I'm always kind of pondering things. So something's kind of,
mulling
what's
things.
What's going through my head right now? And it was really interesting actually because it's just a conversation I had at the hairdresser. And I went to the hairdresser and there was another woman there having her hair done, and I regularly go to the same hairdresser, my gorgeous Marjon, and she said, and I'm heading off to Africa, so she's asking me about that, and then the woman next to me says, "Oh, what are you going to do in Africa?" "I'm going to live there for a couple of months," and she said, "Oh, what do you do? Is it with work or job?" Or with your pleasure. And I said, no, I work in international development. I left it at that. I didn't really get into it. But a bit later, she came back to the conversation and she said, "What do you mean by international aid?" And I told her it's aid and development. And then she launched into telling me about how she's been listening to recently about statistics around trafficking.
Yes.
People trafficking.
Yes.
And, I said to her, the highest incidence of trafficking is drugs, but number 2 is people.
Yeah.
Both for sex and for work.
Yes.
It is really horrendous what's happening around our world. And she said she's become concerned about it, but she was talking to her friends, and her friends were basically saying, we can't change and we can't do anything about it, so just leave it alone. And she said to me, she said, "No, I get quite passionate, Kelly. You think that's all right?" And I said, it's not always helpful if you become that kind of zealot about it, but I think it's responsible to say we can do better, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the world can do better.
Yes, and one changed life is how transformation happens.
Maybe we only do, and I think it's the fact that it always becomes overwhelming.
It becomes overwhelming, and because we know so much nowadays about everything that's happening everywhere. So where do you start?
I think that. Anyway, I'm suggesting, guys, we should do a podcast about talking about it. So don't be overwhelmed by it. You don't have to do everything to change the world. And it was really beautiful. I said to this woman, here's a couple of tips about some resources you could share with your friends. But I said at the end of it, I probably wouldn't get onto my high horse about it.
Yeah.
It's not helpful.
It's finding the balance, isn't it, between, if you know, then what can you do? But you can't do everything about everything.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't do everything,
and that's
but you can
okay.
do something.
So
and
I
makes
said
a
I'd probably
difference,
just say back to people, I reckon we can do better. Let's just do it. Let's whatever we can do. Let's ask. So I'm thinking about that, of course, because I'm going off to Africa, and even when I communicate, I don't want it to. Not everyone gets the chance to do what I do, right?
Yes.
So can I just hold it lightly and just say to people, look, we'd all be better, just whatever you are. So anyway, that's kind of on my mind.
Yeah.
And the power of people in neighbourhoods as well. Well, we get to have a conversation together later, Kelly, in next episode.
Oh, yeah,
and we can maybe deep dive into a little bit of that as well.
Yeah.
How about you, Pen? How are you going?
Golly.
Checking in?
Yeah, a lot's actually happened lately, but I was actually thinking about something quite cute and funny. I, as part of my role, I have these client advisory groups, and these client advisory groups speak into the life of the organisation around everything from policy and services, but they're all older people. So when you gather them, they all sit around, and when we all do a check-in, a bit like this, how you going, what's happening, and of course there's always health stories, and there's, children's stories and great-grandchildren's stories. Anyway, it's fabulous. But anyway, at the end of one of the meetings recently, one of them said to me, "Penny, can I have a chat with you afterwards?" I said, sure. Anyway, and everyone had left, and she sat there and she said, "I think my granddaughter went out with your son." And I said, "Oh gosh, did she?" And she goes, "What happened to him? What happened to him? We really liked him."
Oh, that's so lovely.
Anyway, and I just said,
stories.
Who are we talking about? Anyway, then she mentioned the name of her granddaughter, and I said, I know exactly what happened. And she goes, well, he should have stuck around. She's really good. I said, well, actually, can I just say, she left him and broke my son's heart. And she goes, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's such a delight listening to older people's stories.
It is. It's gorgeous.
And they are hilarious.
Yeah, I actually
hilarious.
saw my
no filters.
my
on some of it.
mother-in-law in the last week, and it was really a beautiful conversation because I haven't seen her for a little while, and she's in a home. She'll probably be listening.
I didn't
Hello,
even know
gorgeous
that. Hello.
Mrs. Cheers. Anyway, so and we're having this conversation, and the funny thing was something came up that was. She kind of had asked me about the facts about it, and she was being very kind about this and saying, I'm sure they were just trying, it was about a particular person that she was concerned they weren't being looked after. And she said, I'm sure the people who are looking after him are just doing their best. Anyway, I said, and I just told her a few stories, and she said, I take that all back. She goes, it's absolutely disgusting.
The older you get, it's like,
I just love
like
it.
a deep bottle of wine.
This
yes.
is really what I think, and here we go. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
very
the
cool.
relationships, and I love older people. That my mother-in-law is like the representative for her. If state representative, she's 88 this year.
Wow.
For residents. How
That's
gorgeous is that?
beautiful.
That's so cool.
Well, today's episode is all about boundaries, and we do have a guest that's going to be coming on to our panel really soon. But if you were to quick fire some cultural boundaries of what you're seeing at the moment, lots of conversation around to be able to catch up about what's happening. Any thoughts? Any quick fires?
Golly. I guess I was thinking about dating because it is a little part of my world right now. We're not going into any stories, but anyway.
Now you have lit the fire.
But I was thinking,
I'm ready for the panel now.
When
I'm ready
it
for
comes
the
to
panel.
boundaries in dating, how important it is to feel safe,
Yes.
to feel heard.
Yes.
And then I guess what you're after is to be chosen, but safety and being heard in those, often those times when you're just sitting there with this new person, how important it is. Yeah.
I love that, Penny.
Yeah.
Any quick fires from you, Kel?
I kind of think if I see it from a completely different perspective, I think here's the beauty of boundaries is what you said, Pen, when they're used really healthily.
Yes.
I just think there's a risk in culture right now of them becoming unhealthy
Yes.
ways of, instead of creating space for growth,
Yes.
they provide an opportunity to keep everyone out and to prevent growth.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you've got to have the rub factors to grow.
You've got to have the
Totally.
friction.
Like leadership grows in challenge. I had that conversation with one of my staff this week. Something I see not just on the horizon, it's something we're dealing with daily at the moment is the impact on AI and our culture and the boundaries that are required around that, and really leaning into the transformation of jobs. The employment rate has gone up for the first time in a really, really long time, economics. And, I think that's a really interesting reflection for us to be able to look into
so I think it'd be cool.
So,
I'm really looking forward to hearing you guys talk about boundaries because I really do think there's the wonder of them and there's the risk of them. Yeah. So you'll get a chance to chat through that.
beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Just so glad to catch up a little. Well, we hear the word boundary often, and have you ever found yourself saying, what is a boundary? At this point in history, we are more aware than ever before of the importance of relational safety, emotional, mental, social and physical, in personal well-being and in the way that we interact with others. We are similarly aware that we cannot always rely on others to protect us. And a fundamental strategy is the adoption of boundaries. They define what we expect and how we allow others to treat us in maintaining mutual respect in relationships. And they foster a sense of empowerment and autonomy in prioritising our needs and preferences for the healthier and more balanced interaction with others. It is good. It's actually essential. But often we grow up not being modelled good boundaries or ways that we can integrate them in our every life. We have learnt that overly rigid and far-reaching boundaries, they can isolate us and they can hinder intimate emotional connections. And they can also undermine our vulnerability. They can stop us from growing. and they may even lead to misunderstandings. So today on our panel, we have some fantastic friends, and it is so exciting to spend some time with women that I deeply respect and have learnt so much about the way that they do their everyday. So a little fun fact, we have Penny Webb on the panel today. And for those who are listening, Penny, you were once my boss.
I was.
You were also the celebrant for our wedding.
I know.
That is 14 years ago now,
Oh,
and
gosh.
you are one of my dearest friends.
Love you
with
lots.
over 25 years under our belt. But if we got a little bit serious for a moment, you are the CEO of a large not-for-profit in our city of Western Australia, and you provide support services, particularly to vulnerable people and those who are elderly and their families. And we would love to explore some of that today, and you'll get to know some of your perspectives and help women find their best life and live with no regrets. And then we have Anne Galambosi, and she is a great friend of mine. In fact, we've worked together. We've run retreats overseas, really helping people find their stories. We wrote a book together.
You did.
Which was very fun. And if we were a little bit more serious, you are a clinical psychologist, and you went back to study later in life and have really explored what it means to reinvent your career. As your children have grown up now, you are a mother, a writer, an Oma of beautiful grandchildren. You are a public speaker, and you love to make complex things simple.
Oh,
welcome,
gosh, don't
ladies.
we need that? Complex things simple.
Welcome. Well, let's begin. Let's begin with the amazing clinical psychologist at the table. What is a boundary?
You're going to help us solve all of our boundary issues today.
All my
Anne.
problems, please. What is a boundary?
Okay. Well, like a good psychologist, I'd sit back and just listen, right? But anyway,
No time for that.
get on. So I would say that's two parts for me. So it's where I finish and you begin. So it's like finding the edges, and also thinking about it as not a request, but a response to someone else's behaviour. So, for example, if my husband is always late, I say, I just need you to be home by 7:30 for dinner. That's a request. A boundary is like, I would love for you to be home at 7:30. If you're not, I'm just going to eat at that time anyway because I'm really hungry.
Right.
So
It's the consequence of
Yes.
that need not being met.
Correct.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well
I would
done.
love to unpack a little bit around the blurriness between where someone starts and someone finishes.
Yeah.
Because I know growing up that was a little bit hard for me. I lived in an environment where other was super important, compassion, empathy, that sense of helping. Like if you really unpacked some of my story, a real core part of my need or desire is I really want to help people. And I think sitting as that kind of helper in the helper kind of role, it can be quite tough to know where those boundaries are.
Which is where they talk about compassion fatigue coming in.
So true.
Could you unpack that a little bit for us, that first definition that you have?
Yeah, I think I can tell you a story about where
Yes.
I violated someone's boundaries nicely.
There you go.
It was just a couple of weeks ago, actually, and my son and I were having a conversation, and he said, one of his little girls has just really just been such a handful that week. And I just went, she's been unwell and it's her first week back at school. That's understandable. And he said, Mum, I didn't really need an explanation. I know why she's distressed. I just wanted you to hear that, I had a hard week. And that was me feeling his edges.
Right.
And I just said to him, absolutely, you didn't want my advice. You just wanted me to say that sucks. And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
And because he could put that boundary there and I could feel his edge, respect his edge, we've got a lot of flexibility and genuine relationship. Whereas if I couldn't respect that, And he would feel less like, he wouldn't have felt comfortable to even tell me that. He would have just kept that to himself probably.
Wow.
So I think when we respect people's edges and acknowledge them and validate them, then they're more likely to be their genuine self with you. You know?
I love that, Anne. Penny, you've had adult children come and go in the recent time, and grandchildren as well staying at your house. Talk to us a little bit about boundaries and how you live with adults.
Yeah, and over my time, we've had short times and we've had long times. Like I remember when my mother-in-law came to live with us, and she lived with us for 6 years, which was a really beautiful time. And then at the time, there were pretty much 5 of us studying. We were all studying. I mean, some of us were working as well, but both my sons and my daughter and my then husband, and I mean, the house was full as, you know, it was really full. And we just said, listen, the way we're going to make this work, Roma, is that we all sit down and talk about, you know, how we're going to do this. And we just made it really practical. Everything around time, about common space, about private space, about meals. And we just saw it as a beautiful opportunity to build bridges.
I love
and that's
that.
how we saw it. Because we wanted to actually make this time together rich, because this is the multi-generational sample right there, you know.
Yes.
And so for us it was about what are the bridges we're going to build here, rather than don't cross this line, you know. Because it's only when you build a bridge do you actually feel the two-way benefit of the relationship. Yeah. But making clear,
I love
it
that.
was big time.
A really interesting thing about boundaries is we know when a boundary has been broken, because there's a sense of safety that has been interrupted, or a sense of that we've been hurt or something has happened within us. I feel like I probably didn't do a great job of that definition. But Anne, what would you say? How do you define relational safety?
I think you did an absolute great job of that. It's exactly right.
You.
It's like, what are you sensing? And, you know, trusting yourself. And that's a really hard thing to do when your trust has been violated before.
Right.
Because you think, oh, I can't trust people anymore, but actually, can I trust myself? Because when someone's broken your trust and you didn't know about it, it's like, how can you trust yourself again? So I think trusting yourself is the biggest thing to being able to understand if you're safe or not.
Yeah.
And what are some really like simple ways that you can assess that? Like, is it being able to have a conversation with a close friend? Is it being able to unpack something that made you feel uncomfortable but you're not sure why? What are some ways that you've seen that relational safety and that sense of trusting yourself or trusting others be unpacked to find ways to be able to really explore that?
Well, Anne, you're going to have a lot more to say about this, but I guess the first thought I think of is that the motive you're going into this space with when a boundary has been crossed is the critical thing. What is the underlying? This isn't about, I've got to win this. It's actually, we've both got to come out of this well and better. And not, I've got to win, you're going to lose. Which to me then is about kindness at the bottom of this, empathy, understanding, being able to step into their shoes. And that's not always easy. Like, it's just not. But I think the approach is what's critical when somebody has crossed your boundaries. I don't know what you think, Anne.
Oh, like 100% agree. And kindness is at the root of it, isn't
Has
it?
to
You
be.
know, like where is your heart in this? If I could just add to that a little bit about people that are very scared to go into conversations about boundaries because they have been hurt.
Right.
I might help them to start building up by suggesting that they just do a simple thing like, what do you guys want for lunch today? You know, like, what do you feel like? It doesn't matter, you've got your sandwich prepared or whatever. What do you feel like? So it's just about starting to ask yourself questions about, like, what do I think? What do I feel? What do I want? And getting to know yourself again and just building that up. And then being a bit courageous. You know, sometimes when you have to put a boundary in place, it just feels yucky. But sometimes once you've done that yucky boundary, there's the relief that comes afterwards. You know, the yucky feeling doesn't last forever. you know. Yeah.
And it's starting to understand ourselves, isn't it? I remember this moment when I was probably quite similar age to my daughter now, and she's 10 turning 11. And I had been told my whole life, and that is the sentence really, that pink was my favourite colour. And I just felt like I could never say, actually, I don't like pink. I'm not really a pink girl. And I had this moment where I was like, actually, blue is my favourite colour, and I really like blue. And observing just that growth around identity and shaping our identity and moving from being a child who is shaped and framed, particularly our worldview, by those who are closest to us, but moving to a point where we then move away a little bit and detach a little bit and start to find our own independence and what that looks like. There's some really interesting work at the moment around parenting and the anxious generation and finding ways to be able to move through some of those phases and to find our own sense of self and identity is a really important part of that. You guys have raised amazing children and with lots of highs and lows in many different ways, but have really created independent, contributing humans to society. I love them all. They're awesome. Any thoughts around that?
Oh, golly. I mean, it is really nice to be sitting the other side of some of this, to be honest with you. You know, like you kind of go, I just look at my kids now and go, you are just good citizens, good friends. You still love your mom.
Yeah.
You know, you're keeping everyone alive in your home and, you know, just really lovely people and, you know, call me up. How you going, Mum? You going all right? Anything I can do? Oh, just, you know, it's a joy. But you know, there's times when it was like you really are trying to find that line between they're living in your home and you have your own personal, and I'm going to say the word boundaries, but I think it just has to be grounded in values. And I say we never, because Mark was amazing, Dad, never drew a line in the sand that said you couldn't come to us with anything.
Yes.
That if you cross over this line, then you're out. Or that's not good enough. But it wasn't like we didn't talk about things, but there was never anything that was going to like push them away. So because everything had to be grounded in values because, you know, I'm not going to be around forever telling them what they can and can't do.
Yes.
They've got to be making their own decisions. So you're gradually letting out this string that says choose. Remember that value, you know. And it's not easy. It's not always easy.
I love that. I remember talking to Kelly about this same conversation and she spoke about you move from being the parent to the coach. And if we start to see ourselves in a coaching mindset where we're bringing encouragement, yes, correction, but opportunity for them to really make decisions and consequences, which are really important. And I think culturally it's quite an interesting age because we have more information than ever before. But information is only information until it's applied with values. And teaching our children really good boundaries is an important component of that so that they can feel really safe in relationships. Any thoughts, Anne, or reflections around that?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point when you talked about freedom. I'm now free to say blue. You know, whereas you didn't feel free, it was like this was imposed upon you, and then you found your freedom, and you're talking about, well, we've taught you your values now, and you are free to take them on board or not take them on board, and that's the scariest part, I think, of having adult children, is they make these decisions for themselves. And so kind of just thinking about giving your children the freedom to set their boundaries and respect it. Yeah. And I think about, you know, when your children become parents, and it's such a vulnerable time, you know, and you think about, you know, the limits of your relationship depend on it in a way because, you know, your child sends a message and says, can you just text before you come? Because when you knock on the door, it wakes the baby up. And, you know, if you're the kind of parent that just goes, well, children should get used to noise anyway, so don't be ridiculous. Or you get offended and you go, well, I just won't come around at all, you know. Yeah. Then you just confine the relationship. But when you respect it, it opens it up to a beautiful freedom, and as much you just figure out where the limits are of the relationship that way.
Yeah, that's right. And to me, that's really that's honouring as well. You know, so
Back to that
it's kind of
value.
it is. It's honouring of them and how the different generations doing life and how they're making decisions. And we've all been there and done it. You know, we
Yes.
did it different to our parents' generation.
True.
Hugely different, you know, and it's very easy to kind of go, oh, we didn't do it and out, you know, we don't do it that way and you're doing it wrong and everything else. And you go, no, you can learn just as much too the other way.
And it's permission for people to be their own person, you know. I had a friend sit on my couch last night and we were talking about a couple of really important things with young, I would call Libby preteen, so she's turning 11 next week, and we were talking about messaging apps and social media and sleepovers.
Yeah.
And the boundaries that we each have in regards to that. And so we were talking about a sleepover that's happening, and both of us decided together that we were going to put a boundary in place for our girls, just because of our own autonomy and the decisions that we'd made in our house. But then when it came to messaging apps, we both had really different ideas around what decisions we would make. But permission in friendship is allowing us to have a conversation like that, where I'm not forcing my friend to do the same things as what I believe for my child. But at the same time, there are some stuff where we come at it together as a parental gang. We're like, okay, this is how we're showing up in this moment. So let's talk about friendships, adult friendships particularly. I believe in long-lasting, decade-long, multi-decade friendships, and that's the core of how this podcast
that's
started.
Kinwomen.
But at the same time, there are some seasons where boundaries shift and change, or boundaries have been broken, and we have to change the tone of a relationship or the amount of time that we spend with a friend. Let's talk about that. Have you had a story or a reflection like that? What do you think is a good practice when it comes to girl friendships as we get older?
Oh, golly. I mean, I think about we've known each other for 25.
Over 25 years.
Kelly and I have known each other for, I'm going to say almost, you know, like maybe 40 years. And we've traversed lots of different, you know,
Seasons, yeah.
lots of different seasons when we were more available, not available. You know, everyone's going through different times. And, I mean, I think, you know, it's not necessarily about always needing to be in their space and be the most important person. I think a good trusting relationship actually is about understanding that things shift a bit, but you can always come back to it.
Beautiful.
That's what I would say. And that, you know, there are times when you really pull together and you're like really tight, and there are other times it's not so tight, and that's so okay.
Yeah.
That's so okay. Yeah.
I love that. Have you got any thoughts around boundaries, friendships, growing older together?
Yeah, I think to me the friendships that have stood the test of time are where I felt really safe to be myself.
Beautiful.
And not judged or criticised. And I have friends around me that are really gracious, and I can do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing and we laugh about it and just accept one another in our good times and bad times, because sometimes we're just really stressed, you know. And, you know, good friends will say, how are your boundaries? You seem so exhausted lately, or you feel so stressed. And they can be a great source of helping us keep really healthy boundaries in life, I think. Friends are great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That just jogged something in my mind where I'm like, how are your boundaries if you feel exhausted? I'm like, ooh, dugga. I need to deal with my boundaries. Okay, let's do some practical tools. What are some practical tools of ways that you have implemented boundaries? I nearly said boundaries. Brownies. How have you implemented boundaries? Let's start with friendship and then let's go family, hey? And let's really help our listeners to find ways to be able to set really good practices in their life.
Oh, okay. Friendship. I mean, I could talk probably more on to do with family, but anyway, I think about friendship. For me, one of the boundaries is that it's okay for them to do things differently. it's almost like that I'm going to let them do that way when I might do it another way.
Oh, I like that.
So even though, yeah, I mean,
It's like
I think
naming
that's
it,
I
hey?
think that's a big one, because we can get so judgy in our friendships, you know, and you kind of go, it's actually okay if they choose to do that and do it that way. And it's not like you're not looking out for one another, but it's not like you're projecting yourself and how you would do it and who you are, because everyone is so different.
Yes.
Everyone comes with such a different.
And it's like naming it. I think we've been through a similar like season, Pen, where we just name it. And you've been like, Amanda, you have teenagers. We live an hour away from one another. You can't come to Black Coffee Club anymore on a weekly basis, but I am still there for you. It's like that moment of actually naming it. At the moment, there is a bit of space between us, but let's find ways to connect in different and new ways because of the season.
Yeah, and you're allowing them to make their choices, but at the same time you're still being a friend and listening and saying, you know, I feel like I'm going to make this decision, and we go, okay. So have you thought about da-da-da-da? But at the end of the day, you're going, yeah.
And setting shape around that. Like
Absolutely.
I have a friend who lives over east, and we've been through many different seasons together. And she has a little ditty that she rings. She's like, 5 minutes with Kim. So straight away, boundary. It's like, I've got 5 minutes. I can't do a half an hour chat. 5 minutes with Kim. She did it to me last night. 5 minutes with Kim. And I'm like, boom, let's go. And it's never 5 minutes, let me tell you.
Gorgeous, love it.
And thoughts.
And I love that you can just maybe say like, hey, I really need to chat. Is this a good time? Just even asking permission before you launch into something for half an hour, you know. But I think about something called emotional trespassing. It's like, especially, you know, like when I'm in this field and have ideas and thoughts about what's going on when they're talking about their children or something, to just think, have they actually asked for my opinion? Have they actually asked for my advice? Because sometimes I think we just trespass right in there and just go right in and without even kind of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I watch out for in my family and friendships. But I think with my grandchildren and children, I think it's about being really transparent and clear, because they have such a strong sense of justice, you know. And so if I get some child come in, you know, to my work, and there's a bowl of lollies there, and they just say to their mum, can I have a lolly? And mum goes, yeah, no worries, you can have a lolly. Then a couple of minutes like, can I have another lolly? Yeah. And then they ask for a third and they go, no, I think you've had enough. And the child's like, oh. But if they had said, hey, can I have a lolly? Yep, you can have one now and one later. So then they ask for another one. Yep. Another one. Yep. They ask for the third one. It's like, mate, we just said there'd be two. And they go, oh, all right. Because their justice sense kicks in, you know. Like, so are we clear when they're really upset? Just check in with ourselves, like, have I been really clear about this boundary? You know?
Yeah.
And so often when we get to that third, it's not even just that a boundary has been trespassed. There's shame that comes with that, or you always ask for, that's too much food, too much sugar. Like we can easily layer some of those languages over it, that then it's not even just, oh my gosh, I asked for too many treats. I'm a bad person for doing that.
But it's the why though, isn't it? And I always think that's important, is the why. In fact, I interviewed someone the other day for a manager role, and I asked them what was their key strengths. And one of them, they said, and I've never heard anyone say this, they said, I'm an educational leader.
Beautiful.
And I said, what does that look like? And they just said, because when I'm with someone, I always teach them the why and not just the what, you know. And I think when we're talking about children and relationships, there's a why behind it. So do they know the why you're setting this boundary? Do they know the why you're saying, actually, I won't do that, but I can do that, you know?
Beautiful.
Well, as we bring this episode to a close, there is a topic that is very much focused in the media right now, and it also is something that I believe is a conversation around boundaries, but it can be a really difficult one. I'd really like to ask just for your thoughts and reflections around boundaries when it comes to relationships, or we're observing one of our friends and we can see that maybe there is some domestic violence, or there is some boundaries that are being broken that we feel really concerned about. How do we raise that topic as kin women, as people who love our friends but want to do it in a real way with sensitivity, where there is a sense of boundaries being violated and you want to support a friend?
Okay, Anne, I think you go first on this one.
Well,
It's
it's
a big one.
interesting. It is a big one because we are a very individualistic society predominantly. I would say the majority of people I hang around would say my problem is my problem. But if you think of other cultures, your problem is my problem. And so there's much more permission, I think, to get involved if you're in that collectivist kind of culture.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah, that does become tricky. But I think it's about permission to offer.
Right.
You know, so it's like, I would like to say something, and I just want to know if I have your permission to give you some of my thoughts.
I love that. So if we were role playing, it would be, hey, can we go out to coffee? I'd just love to spend time with you. Do I have permission to just start a conversation that matters, to just ask you some questions? And how can I create some safety around the boundaries of this conversation for you, something like that?
I actually also think, obviously I work with a lot of older people and they talk about in Australia now 1 in 6
elderly
older
violence,
people are experiencing what they call elder abuse, and it's quite a broad subject, but a lot of times just the nature of their the age they grew up in and their cultures and everything else, they actually don't know what is okay and what is right and what is not okay and what is not right. And so they've it's so when we see it as observers, we kind of go, oh, that's wrong. What are you putting up with that for? That actually they don't see, especially if you've been in that environment for a long time. It's like the frog in the pot, and then
true.
the water is bubbling away and the frog has just lost its life,
Autonomy,
right?
yeah.
But they never saw it. It's not an overnight thing where it's one incident. And so just such a gentle, kind approach to come alongside that person and be a friend, not even necessarily to point out, straight away what is wrong here. It's actually just being a friend and coming alongside. And I just think that's really important, because unless you have that trust, we don't have a right.
Yes.
I mean, there are obviously laws around this. I'm not talking about lawful stuff. I'm just saying, just being a voice in their life is just so important.
And giving them a voice too,
Absolutely.
Like my dad got very sick very quickly in his 60s. He got motor neuron disease, and between his diagnosis and his death was only 4 months. And so in that period of time, there were many things that he could no longer do for himself. But a boundary that I was very sure of in that time and had learnt from people like you and Anne is I was very fierce on my dad having a voice. Even though he was losing his voice, he had lost his ability to move his hands, his legs. Like there were many parts of that word that were incredibly what's the word? Like just
Losing your dignity.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
dignity. Like
Yeah.
that's-
Dignity is
just-
so important.
And so how do we create examples where they're able to have a voice, I do a similar thing with my kids when we go to the doctors. Often the doctor will speak to me, not to the child, even though it's the child who's the one who's unwell. And I'll say to the doctor, oh, you can ask Liberty, you can talk to the doctor, like creating place where I'm not speaking on behalf of my child, because they're the ones that know their body and know what's happening in their body, and how do we create voice and opportunity for that. Well, I know I dropped a big topic right at the end,
You did.
but it is an opportunity for us to continue the conversation after the episode and start a conversation about boundaries with your friends. Really check in around where they end and where you start, and that space between one another and being able to do that well. But we're going to continue this episode coming up. We'd like to thank all of our guests that have been a part of today. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, just go and find us on all platforms and go have a look at our website. We have some blogs and some audio excerpts on there, www.kinwomen.com. Start a conversation that matters. This podcast provides general educational information only. Neither the host nor guests are providing personal advice, diagnosis, or treatment through this platform. Information shared is general and may not apply to specific situations. All stories we have gotten permission to be able to share, and the podcast and its participants cannot be held legally responsible for consequences resulting from the use of this information. For personal guidance, please consult a qualified mental health professional. By listening, you acknowledge these limitations and accept full responsibility for any actions taken based upon this content.
So join us for more conversations. Follow us on our podcast and socials. I'd like to thank Mark Ralph, studio engineer from Elemental Sounds, Natalie Kellner, producer from Mindful Marketing. Until next time, you are our kin.